What's poppin', players? This is Gold Ray, part 4 of the list. Let's get to it. Roy Jones Jr. He was an undeniable talent. The weight classes that he climbed. Boosie. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs. Roy Jones Jr., Boosie, undeniable talent. Next up on the list, Simone Biles. She has had some moments for life. Nicki Minaj. You know Nicki can flip all over her track. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Simone Biles, Nicki Minaj, moment for life. Next up on the list, Chris Paul, Pitbull, got all the moves as a point guard. Big Sean. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Chris Paul, Big Sean, moves. Next up on the list, D Brown. When he won the dunk contest, he had some Reebok pumps on that he pumped it up. Next up on the list of the Joe Budden. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, D Brown, Joe Budden, pump it up. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Kenny the Jet Smith. Sound like Kenny the Jet Smith been getting it for a long time. Q-Tip. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Kenny the Jet Smith, Q-Tip, getting it. Next up on the list, Spud Webb. His hops was the wickedest when he won that slam dunk contest back in the 90s something. Yeah, I didn't look it up. But he definitely won the dunk contest. Bow Wow. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Spud Webb, Bow Wow, the wickedest. Next up on the list, who I got in here? Alright, it's a group, but they definitely have solo projects. 8 Ball. Rewind that. The Running Rebels. Larry Johnson, Stacey Augman. They was coming out hard. One of the first college teams I remember that was really putting it down on a national stage. The Running Rebels. 8 Ball MJG. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Larry Johnson, 8 Ball, Stacey Augman, MJG, coming out hard. Now yes, I could have went and got the individual projects and this and that. If you don't know about the Running Rebels or the Fab Five, you don't know about the phenomenons that was them back then. On to the next. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Joe Dumars, MC Breed, I'm gonna give you what you want. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Joe Dumar, MC Breed, I'm gonna give you what you want. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Devin Booker. When he score on you, he give it to you straight like that. Joyner Lucas. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Devin Booker, Joyner Lucas, straight like that. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Ron Harper. Now when he came in the league, He was murdering everything. Supposed to be somewhat comparable to Jordan, somewhat. But when he joined Jordan and Pippen, I'm sure it had to feel so good. Mace. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Ron Harper, Mace, feels so good. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Chris Bosh. Now he did take a back seat and temper his game when he got to Miami. But up in Toronto, he was something serious. Big Mike. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Chris Bosh, Big Mike, something serious. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Kenyon Martin. #1 draft pick, I'm So Fly. Lloyd Banks, Punchline King. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Kenyon Martin, Lloyd Banks, I'm So Fly. Next up on the list, Damon Stoudemire, Mighty Mouse. He took no days off. Wale. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Damon Stoudemire, Wale, no days off. Next up on the list, Jaylen Brown. He done got his game so smooth, it's like a Cadillactica. Big Crit. Next up on the list, the Ballin' MCs, Jaylen Brown, Big Crit, Cadillactica. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Dwight Howard. When he was winning them Defensive Player of the Years, did he get 3 in a row? He was all the way turned up. Roscoe Dash. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Dwight Howard, Roscoe Dash, all the way turned up. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, God Sham God. Left us with a move, the Sham God. Some God level stuff. Fred the Godson. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, God Sham God, Fred the Godson, God level. Next up on the list, Steve Nash. Like it or not, he did win 2 MVPs. Bubba Sparks. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Steve Nash, Bubba Sparks, like it or not. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Byron Scott. When he got to LA, he looked at Kareem and Magic and said, let's ride, Richie Rich. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Byron Scott, Richie Rich, let's ride. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Allen Houston. His game was rather unique, AZ. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Allen Houston, AZ, rather unique. Next up on the list, Rebecca Lobo. Always got her, well, let me not say always. Got a lot of her points in the middle, like Moni. She's in the middle. Moni in the middle, Moni Love. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Rebecca Lobo, Moni Love, Moni in the middle. Next up on the list, Skip to My Lou, Rayford Alston. He went from and one to the league. Now that's a mic check. Jules Santana. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Rayford Austin, Jules Santana, Mike Check. Next up on the list, Jason Tatum. When he in his groove, he do what he feel like. Ellie Dollar. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Jason Tatum, Ellie Dollar, Feel Like. Next up on the list, Lamar Odom, Nocturnal, The Knock. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, they both are supposed to be next man up. Next up on the list of the Ballin MCs, Lamar Odom, Nocturnal, The Knock. Next up on the list, Reggie Miller. Known as one of the best three-point shooters in the game ever. Ballin', We Fly High, Jim Jones. And I apologize, Jim. I know he was in the garden and he apologized. We Fly High, though. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Jim Jones, Reggie Miller, We Fly High. Next up on the list, Jason Williams, White Chocolate. Seemed like he played under his own terms. He was the man that I is. Logic. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Jason Williams, Logic, Man That I Is. Next up on the list, The Brow, Anthony Davis. For all your hard work in getting a championship, you deserve it. Future. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Anthony Davis, Future, You Deserve It. Next up on the list, T.A., Terry Allen. Defense was smothering, or should I say hostile. Brought the hostile gospel every night. Talib Kweli. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Terry Allen, Talib Kweli, Hostile Gospel. Next up on the list, Jermaine O'Neal. He was down for his teammates on and off the court. He put his life on the line. Mr. Mike. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Jermaine O'Neal, Mr. Mike, Life on the Line. Next up on the list, Rajon Rondo. Always looked like he might smack you at any time. Cassidy, On the Grind. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Rajon Rondo, Cassidy, On the Grind. And I meant Cassidy looked like he want to smack somebody all the time. And last on this part of the list, Amari Stoudemire. And when they was running down in Phoenix, we them boys, Wiz Khalifa. Next up on the list of the Ballin' MCs, Amari Stoudemire, Wiz Khalifa, we them boys. That concludes part 4 of the Ballin' MCs list. We only got one more part to go, and the one I'm sure y'all all been waiting for. All the GOATs and legends and all of that come together. I'm Gold Ray. I hope y'all been liking it. If so, like and share it to y'all pages. Leave a comment. Let me see how y'all think, what y'all think about it. Part 5. See y'all. Peace.